Harimi, harimi, al tirai, harimi, al tirai. Imri le'arei Yehuda, hine Elokeichem. Harimi, harimi, al tirai.
Page 310 in Daas Tevunos. It's interesting. I was just reading an article that I happened to pick this up last night, and it was quoting many of the rabbis from the previous generations who speak about how wonderful this sefer is, Daas Tevunos, and how important it is. Rav Dessler said that everything you need to know is found in the sefer. The Alter of Kelm, who was a famous teacher of ethics, a big gadol, he spoke about how important the sefer is, and Revolba, who only passed away, I would say 10, 15 years ago, also spoke about how important this sefer is.
Which sefer?
Oh, the one we're learning now.
Oh.
Daas Tevunos, how important this book is. So that gave me extra inspiration to learn it today.
That's great.
So the last thing we were speaking about was that whenever we do an act, we do a mitzvah, we don't do a mitzvah, it affects the spiritual worlds. And we were talking about how different people and different acts affect the spiritual world in different ways. So let's continue from there. The idea is shetanai hapoel v'hanifal b'chol hamislavin lahem hem hamishanim umachlifin tolos hamaisim. Depending on the one who is doing the act, and the act itself affects what the act does and everything associated with it. Yonasan ben Uzziel, we mentioned last week Yonasan ben Uzziel. He was the one that when he studied Torah, if a bird flew over his head, it would burn up. It would just light on fire. So Yonasan ben Uzziel, Afisha, ish kadosh v'nai ramaot, since he was a holy man, like on a totally different, higher level, v'nishmaso me'uteres be'itre kedusha ve'araba, in his soul was crowned with crowns of holiness and a great spiritual light. Al kain, therefore, ma'aseh asher yaseh yalav yagil l'ruma shel olam, the actions that he would do would reach the highest heights of the world. V'noah kol afani hakodesh, and they would cause to move the spiritual mechanisms. So when Rav Yonasan ben Uzziel would study Torah, that had such a powerful effect in the spiritual world because of how holy he was and because of the level of his soul. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, when I study Torah, first of all, even if I had a bird go, I've never seen a bird fly over my head. I don't know if I ever had a bird fly over my head when I was learning Torah, but I'm sure I had a fly at one point. I never saw the fly burn up. Never happened to me. But Rav Yonasan ben Uzziel, even though he was doing the same, technically he was doing the same action that I do when I study Torah, since he was on such a high level, the birds would burn up. That even the spiritual impact of what he did had a manifestation in the physical world. The Adam, Acher, and another person, she'eino kol kach kadosh, who's not so holy, not as holy, ve'eino me'uter be'ela hataros, and he doesn't have these crowns, lo yis'alu ma'asav li'iloi zeh, his actions won't get to this height. The Kan Hadroga Rabbim, we see here that there are many levels. Lufi Achanas Ha'adam, according to a person's preparation. Lufi Achanas Ha'maisim Atzmam, and according to the preparation of the actions that he's doing. The Hazman, and the time. The Chal Shar HaMislavim, and everything else associated with it. So this doesn't just apply to different people. Even the actions that a person does himself can have different effects. There's no comparison if someone davens spacing out versus someone who davens with a real focus on what he's saying. And there's no comparison someone who makes Kiddush on Friday night and just spacing out versus someone who makes Kiddush and has in mind and a deep concentration that he's sanctifying the Shabbos and he's resting on the seventh day to testify that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. There's no comparison when you have the proper kavanah, the proper intent. So, but what's an important caveat to this is something that Rav Chaim Volozhiner writes, is that even though the intent, that's an example of something that can affect the mitzvah and make the mitzvah much, much greater and more powerful, that the mitzvah still has to be done in the right time with the right details. Right? This was a criticism of the early Hasidim. For example, they would daven in the wrong time. So no matter how much kavanah you have to daven, if it's not in the right time, it's not affecting those spiritual worlds properly. The mitzvah has to be fulfilled. The action has to be with all of the proper parameters that are given in the Talmud and the Code of Jewish Law. So you can't just take today, in the middle of January, you can't just take a lulav and have the right kavanah and make a blessing on the lulav and the esrog, and you have all the proper intent. Even though you had all these proper intents, the action that you did is totally meaningless. Right? The Chaim Volozhin talks about it's more important to do the action in the proper time than to have the most proper intent. The proper intent is something which adds power to the action, but if you would sit in a sukkah now, if you would eat matzah this morning, you could have all the kavanas, all the proper intents in the world, it wouldn't do anything. Okay. That was the criticism of the early Hasidim, that they would daven in the wrong time, because the reason they were doing it was coming from a good place. They wanted to have the proper intent, so they would spend a long time preparing themselves so they can get in the right mindset. But then the time they would daven, you could daven shachars at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't work. Okay. Halozo sachana klalish nasan kodesh baruch hu la'amo Yisrael betchila. Liosa mikaymin va'osin kol haTorah v'mitzvah. Ki zula zeh lo hayichol nasas ma'aseyem ma'aseh atikon hagadol sheim osin l'chol kol habriya k'mo shenivar. And this is what Hashem gave the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, that when they do the Torah and the mitzvos, it'll affect the entire world. Vim kol zeh, b'hem atzmam yesh hadraga shezacharnu. So Hashem gave the power to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai that their actions will affect the entire world. We're saying even with even with that power that Hashem gave the Jewish people, there are many, many levels. You can't compare a person who's an ignorant fellow, an am haaretz, who does a mitzvah, compared to someone who is a Baal Torah, someone who studies Torah seriously. And even in the Baal Torah, the people who study Torah, you can't compare someone who is a Baal Torah that is not sanctified so much to someone who is sanctified. Or you could have an 18-year-old guy in yeshiva doing a mitzvah, and you could have one of the Gedolei Hador, the greatest rabbis of the generation, doing a mitzvah. The Gadol Hador is doing the mitzvah is going to affect much more than the 18-year-old. And then also in the action itself, a holy action versus an action which isn't sanctified as much. From the few that Hashem calls, and you have many levels, and then you have the few people in the generation that are very dear to Hashem versus the rest. So you have many, many levels of holy people, and you can go to the highest level into Moshe Rabbeinu. So don't think that one person who does a holy action is the same as someone else who does a holy action. Then we're saying even within the action itself. So let's just start the next part. Now, we're going to start talking, we've mentioned a lot about Adam Harishon, Adam, the first person. And the Ramchal talks a lot about what Adam was before he sinned, what happened after he sinned, and what we're trying to accomplish to get back to that. And it's so important because when Adam ate from the Eitz Daas, when he ate from the tree of knowledge, it affected all of humanity, because we are all descendants from Adam, and what he did fundamentally changed creation, the physical and the spiritual world. So he's going to now start speaking about that. You need to know that this is talking about man in general. Shekula told us Adam Harishon, everything, we are all descendants of Adam. Sheyesh bo chilukim rabim uzmanim nishtanu alav. And there are certain fundamental changes that happen during different time periods. Kikodem chet Adam Harishon, before Adam sinned, hinehu Adam haya me'uter umuchtar ba'ataras kedusha vikar rav ma'od. The sanctity and the holiness of Adam, he was crowned with these crowns of holiness that are very, very great. Ad shebikshu malachei hasharis, to the point where the holy angels, the highest level angels, lomer lefanav kadosh, they wanted to call him holy. The angels wanted to give praise to Adam. That's how holy Adam was. Like it says in the Medrash, he possessed incredible knowledge and holiness and every positive character trait. He was the handiwork of God. All of us, we were born from a mother. Adam was actually created by God. Since he had this level of holiness, this extreme level of closeness to Hashem, every action that he did had a tremendous effect on the world, much more than our actions have. Because according to his level and according to his worth, all of his actions reflected that. Right? He was on a totally qualitatively different level of holiness than we are now before he sinned. So therefore, as the Ramchal was saying before, that based on a human being's level affects the level which his actions can affect the world. So Adam, who was on this totally different level, a holier level, his actions affected it. Vim calls in with all this. Now with all of that, Adam had he followed the commandments that he was supposed to, would have gone on even a holier level. So he was on a level of holiness he started out, which is totally imperceivable to us. Had he followed the mitzvahs, he would have risen to an even higher level. What's going to happen after the resurrection of the dead? That could have happened without death. So had Adam not sinned and he followed the commandments, he would have gone to this even holier level that humanity now, we're only able to achieve that holy level after we die and come back to life. Adam would have been able to achieve that level without death. Now, as humanity as a whole, to achieve that level, first we have to die. And the Ramchal talks about, because when we die, that's the only way to get rid of the impurity that became part of us through Adam's sin. Vatira. What?
You have to die first?
Yes, everyone has to die.
I know
Sorry.
we have to die,
But the point is that had Adam not sinned, we would not have to die. Part of the reason that we have to die is to get rid of the impurity that became part of all of humanity because of the sin that Adam did. So had Adam not sinned, humanity would not have had to die. Even though Adam was on he says 2 ma'ods, very, very high level compared to what we are now. Nevertheless, it was possible that he sinned and it gets lost, and that he would die, and that's exactly what happened. However, had he fulfilled his commandment, he would have been totally complete. And he would have been an eternal being that no evil could have befallen him. However, when he sinned, it's not only did he not achieve this higher level that he could have achieved, he lost what he was in his hand already. And he went to becoming a lowly human being, a denigrated human being, like we are now. And this is what the verse says: that Adam did not maintain his glorious level until the following day. He has become like the animals. So the Ramchal is going to go further later and explain these different levels, but basically Adam was on a level which was imperceivable to us, pretty much. And he was so holy that the angels wanted to call him holy, wanted to actually not pray to him, but give him praise. And had he not sinned, he would have gone to an even higher level, which humanity can no longer achieve until we die. Adam would have achieved that even without dying. And then next week we'll talk about more specifically the different levels, what Adam could have achieved, what he was at, where we are now, and how we get back there in the whole course. And this is going to affect the whole course of human history. The whole course of human history we're going to learn is just to get back to the point of Adam before he sinned.